What's up? I'm back. Finally, another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. That line that you guys unfortunately have not heard in a month and a half, or maybe even longer. I'm not sure when the last episode was, but a lot's been going on. But I'm happy to be back. The last couple episodes, some of the stuff that was going on in my personal life with a loved one going through cancer, and actually just found out another friend of mine was just diagnosed. And if I didn't sound like myself the last couple episodes, it's probably what it was. And, I apologize. But this episode, I think that I was focused and I was ready to go. And I had an awesome guest. And I'm happy to be back. Before this episode, I was actually a little nervous about looking at statistics. I've been kind of avoiding it because I'm like, nobody's listening to this show. It's been a month and a half, 2 months. There's so much free content and great shows out there. There's probably nobody listening to the show anymore. They've probably given up on it. And like I've always told you guys, no matter how much time goes by, I truly believe in the show, and I truly love doing the show, and truly believe in the idea and of the ripple effect and how we all can make a difference. And I look at the statistics, and I was happy to see that people are downloading, and a decent amount of downloads. So thank you so much, everybody. I don't know if it's new listeners or if it's old listeners, whoever's going back into archives and listening to old shows and listening to new shows. I truly appreciate it. It's awesome to see that, and I'm glad I can put out some new content for you guys. And I have the legendary lead singer Burton C. Bell from the legendary band Fear Factory. If you guys haven't heard, I'm sure you guys have probably heard of the name. They've been around since, late 80s, early 90s, and early 90s, I believe. And they were revolutionary. I mean, they have this man versus machine theme, and their music is a perfect reflection of that influence with the machine-like sound and industrial keyboards, and they're just awesome. One of the first bands to take really heavy music and add clean vocals. They influence bands like Slipknot and Machine Head and Deftones, and even if they don't admit it, they definitely influence bands like Killswitch and All That Remains, and all the newer bands that combine screaming with clean vocals and have the double bass. The oldest band I know that did that, I think I even heard Dino talk about this, the guitarist of Fear Factory, how he heard one from Metallica and the double bass drum part, at the end of the song where, the riff of the guitar goes with the double bass, and how he loved that and basically continued doing that. And it was unbelievable. And they took that to a whole nother level, and they added keyboards, and they did just so many things that were just completely different than any other metal band at that time. I mean, the idea of using keyboards and even like some drum machines or whatever, anything that was electronic was just very taboo at that time and looked down upon in the metal scene. And I don't know if it was just the history of hating disco and stuff like that, but it was just very different. And Burton has an amazing voice, and it's amazing that a guy who was doing a death metal when Fear Factory first got together was capable of having these beautiful and creative and catchy melodies. So definitely check them out. We talk a lot about supporting bands, so please check them out and support the band. Buy their album if you want your favorite artist to continue playing music and try to make a living doing it. Then please support them. Buy the album, download their stuff, buy merchandise, go to the shows. And the music industry unfortunately is in a shitty place because we live in a world where people get everything for free. Just like this podcast, there's tons of free content out there. That's why, I was saying that it's hard to expect people to stick around and wait for your new episodes when there's so much free stuff out there. And, and it's hard to make money when you're basically podcasts are put out for free. And the same way podcast hosts and creators have gotten creative with their ways of making money by having sponsors and having merchandise or advertising other work they do. If they're a comedian, they advertise their shows, their stand-up shows and stuff like that. I think the music industry has to get creative too. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think that we live in a world where people have so much free entertainment and so many different avenues in different ways of getting free stuff today that it's hard to get people to pay for anything. And you get people who grew up with the internet, and they're used to that. They're used to not having to pay for stuff. So it's going to be very hard to ever go backwards. But, hopefully people understand that until the music industry finds a way to get artists a decent wage for their hard work and all the pain, sweat, and tears, and or blood, sweat, and tears that they pour in their music and live shows. Until then, hopefully you guys buy their music. And of course, like I always tell you guys, if you want to support my show, my Theory 6 music project, which you can find everywhere you can download music, it's a great way of supporting the show. All the money goes to supporting my music project and this podcast. So obviously all the music you hear in this podcast is mine, except the song you hear in the background, which is Fear Factory. I would put their full song at the end of the podcast, but YouTube, like you guys probably know from other times I've had artists on the show, they can be really anal about playing other people's music, and I don't want this video episode to get kicked off YouTube or flagged or anything like that. So I'll just play in the background, and you guys can just search them because they're everywhere. So you can, it won't be hard to find Fear Factory's music. So check it out. Thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. This is amazing experience to have a guy like Burton C. who I've been a fan of for many years, and it's awesome to just have these really interesting conversations. It's one thing that I didn't attempt to do, but it's definitely something that happens, and I'm glad it happens, that we kind of bullshit. We have a conversation, you know, but people who've been listening to the show back in the day, they know that back in the day when I first started the show, I used to have these intros, and I didn't know when to shut the fuck up, to be honest with you. I just had to have these rants, these long rants, and I just didn't know when to stop or how to ease my way into a casual conversation. How do you have an intro and then go into a casual conversation? It's just really hard. So I started doing what you guys have probably picked up on, is just going right into the conversation, and that's what I did. And the nice thing, it keeps it casual, and sometimes you go down different paths, and it sparks, because it's so casual, it sparks different conversations you might not spark if you have more of a formal Q&A interview. So that's why I don't even like calling them interviews, to be honest. But it was fun because we talked about a lot of stuff, and you see a different side of Burton that you might not see in other interviews. There's a lot of interviews of them online because obviously they've been around for 25 years and they're a legendary band who's done a lot of interviews. But you know, I like the fact that I got to know him as a person and really got to shine a light on how interesting he is, and some of his points of views on just other things. And so it was a true pleasure to have him on. I've been just so lucky. I've had the real Rick Ross on, the legendary Dr. Brzezinski, who has been treating and curing cancer since the early 90s and fighting the FDA. I've had Abraham Bolden, the first black Secret Service agent on a presidential detail, and his amazing story linked to JFK. Jesse Ventura, Sean Stone, who filmmaker, and also the son of Oliver Stone. I've had just so many awesome guests. And Roger Stone, who worked with Nixon and Reagan, and actually was part of, I think he's still helping Trump with running for president. He's a political consultant who worked with Nixon and Reagan, and we had him on to talk about the JFK book. And I've had Raul Reynolds from Enter Shikari. I just had, so many awesome people, from philosophers, authors, historians, and Gregory A. Smith, the doctor, who did the movie American Addict, which is a great documentary. So and obviously James Corbett, who's been on multiple times, who I'm a huge fan of. So I just can't thank everybody enough for listening. I can't thank all my guests enough for being on here. I apologize for another longer than I wanted intro, and so I'll get right to the interview. Thanks again, guys. This is a video version, or a video conversation, so like I've told you guys, and hopefully I didn't already say in this intro, anytime somebody calls in using video, you can find the video version of the episode on our YouTube channel, and just search the Ripple Effect Podcast or RV Theory 6, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. What's up, Burton?
Ricky, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Thanks for being with me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, this is gonna be fun. One thing I love about doing a podcast is that nobody tells you what you have to do or who you can have on or whatever. So it's awesome to one day have a historian and the next day have a metal band that you grew up loving. And this is awesome because you guys are one of those bands that I mean, one of the first bands that really got me into metal, and well, at least the really heavy stuff. And I'm sure you probably have heard this many a times, but that Mortal Kombat soundtrack, I think, exposed people to not just you guys, but I mean, Gravity Kills was on there. I mean, Typo Negative, just a lot of really cool bands
That's right.
And Napalm Death, and just so many cool bands. And it really, I mean, in a weird way, it kind of changed my life and my perspective on music. And you guys were so influential because you guys were doing something that was so different. And I've heard you on other interviews talk about this because it's so true how a lot of kids today, especially in the metalcore scene, who are doing these double bass breakdowns and really, similar to Fear Factory where the double bass is the beat, the riff and the bass drum going together. You guys have been doing that forever. And a lot of these kids probably don't even know who Fear Factory is, but yet they influenced their whole genre. And
That's right.
Does that bother you a little bit sometimes when it's just like, not because I mean, I've heard you're similar to myself, like you know the importance of history and knowing where things started and how we got here today. And with music, it's no different. And I feel like kids should know the history of the music and who paved the way.
Absolutely. And, you're right. I have heard, I hear every show of Mortal Kombat got me into your band. I think it's, sorry, my son.
Oh, it's okay.
I've heard that a lot, and that's great. I was on, Fear Factory. That was exposed Fear Factory to a huge audience of gamers and video and movie people alike. I was on that record twice with GZR and Fear Factory.
That's right, and that was a cool track.
And that's it. And you're right. We've been doing this sound for a long time. This is what when Dino and I started the band. This is the sound that we wanted to hear in music. This is what we tried to emulate. And so what we were creating was, we were taking influences from people that we enjoyed, bands that we enjoyed, and really taking it a step further. And, like you said today, kids today have no idea where it comes from. I could say, a few bands off the top of my head that we extracted ideas from and made them our own. Bands like Napalm Death, bands like Killing Joke, bands like Ministry, bands like Godflesh, Sisters of Mercy, just a name, just a starting point. But we didn't sound like those bands. We started our own sound. But like you said, these metalcore bands and their young fans, they might not know where it comes from at this point. And I'm cool with that, but there is time for them still to learn the historical value of it when they want to do it. The history is there if they dig deeply enough. And I don't feel begrudgingly towards any of these people. I feel honored in a way, or I feel quite honored that our music has inspired and influenced a whole generation of artists, and that's something a lot of people can't say, and I'm proud of that. So I can be satisfied with that.
Yeah, and you guys have done something that many artists haven't even come close to do, and that's put out multiple awesome full-length albums from beginning to end. A full album of awesome songs and a concept. And I mean, you have bands today where they really, I mean, they have one good album, or a mostly good album, and then, the next album kind of is a little weak or whatever. And I know that there's obviously a lot of pressure in the music industry that as a fan, you don't see the pressure of, okay, you need to get this out by this time, or you have this timeline, or, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scene, I'm sure that, and that's what I should be doing, drinking some wine. And, you a big wine drinker?
I like wine, yes.
Yeah, I'm Portuguese, so my dad grew up making it and stuff, and I just started making it too. So it's
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, it's fun because it's one of those things that like are very relaxing. And even though if you're out with your buddies, at a bar, you might be the only idiot who's holding a wine glass, but the buzz.
It's okay.
But yeah, but the buzz is it's not comparable to anything else. It's always the same thing, relaxing, and so it's nice. But and now I lost my train of thought. But what the hell was I talking about?
Sorry,
That wasn't your fault. But yeah, I mean, just the history of it, and it's so important. And Demanufactured's been out for 20 years. I mean, that's crazy. It came out in '95, and I mean, I grew up, and that album just blew my mind. I mean, it was nothing. It felt like a movie. Like I remember being a kid and just sitting in my room and just looking through the artwork and lyrics, and just having the lights dim and just listen to this album. And it almost was similar to I guess some of the feelings that people get in like listening to trance music at a on ecstasy or something, where they call it trance because you go into this trance. Similar to that album, like it would take you away to another place. And
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm glad you mentioned that it made you feel like you were watching a movie, because that was our intent. We wanted to create a soundtrack to a movie that did not exist, because Fear Factory was influenced, the bands I mentioned before, but there's so many other things like the ambient dance music and the heavy dance music and the soundtracks, Terminator, RoboCop, Blade Runner, Apocalypse Now. With all these types of movies, we were big fans of horror films, sci-fi films. So we wanted to create a story, and that's where Demanufactured was really the album that we started the concept in full swing. Where it's like, okay, we got to make this band more than what it is. We got to, use what we have to the best of our advantage. And we had great artists, we had great producers working with us, not well-known producers, but people we respected, from working with Dave McKeon on the album artwork, who was doing Sandman comic books at that point, working with Reese Wilbur and Bill Lieb, who were in one of the preeminent like industrial bands of that time period, and being on Roadrunner Records, an up and coming label that wasn't a major label, but it was a very strong indie at that point, and we had incredible backing. And then when our record came out, people, not just you, didn't know what was going on, but the whole industry were like, "What the fuck is this? This is not metal." A lot of the death metal bands on our label like, "This is not death metal." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks."
that's probably a compliment. Yeah, that's a compliment.
Yeah, it's not death metal. It's like, well, it's not metal. I'm like, well, it's heavy. It's aggressive. And so that's why we toured with bands from Sick of It All, Iron Maiden. We toured with all types of bands, and we were just trying to create something that was true to ourselves, true to the time period that we're living in at that time. Because at that time, when we were writing Demanufactured, we were experiencing the Rodney King beatings, the Rodney King trial, and then the Rodney King riots. And then right after that was the Northridge earthquake. So this all happened within a year. And it's just, LA was so chaotic with the upheaval of culture, the upheaval of the authority system. No one trusted the police. Rodney King was the first videotaped police beating on record. And, well, besides from the ones from the 60s on the equal rights marches, but
the civil rights and all that.
The first actual beating of a single individual by police figures. And so there was no one trusted the police. The racial tension was just unbelievable. It's like you could feel it in the air all over Los Angeles with everyone. And then the riots happened, and just full hell broke loose. And then martial law happened, and then the Northridge earthquake happened. And then everyone is completely upended with no place to live. And that was the story of Fear Factory at that point. We had nowhere to go. So we were living on the edge, and we're living in truly living in a dystopian society. So as much as it is a sci-fi story, it is also based in reality, and this is what we were really living through. And that is what I think makes a good story. What makes a good record is that reality of the passion that is in there. And because if what you write and what you what you portray as your music, no one's going to believe unless it's not passionate. If you're not saying anything that's not, if you're speaking something that's not true and you're not passionate about it, then other people will see that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of truth to that, because I've had Mike Martins on, the Guitars of All That Remains, and we've talked about how their songwriting, how Phil will just walk in and just write a bunch of shit like real quick. Sometimes if he's, he'll get lazy sometimes and stuff like that, or and you hear about bands that are like that the singers or the band doesn't really. It's like it becomes less of an art, and it's more of, let's just make some cool riffs and make something that sounds cool. But you can hear the difference between a band like that and a band like Fear Factory. Like, you could hear the passion in your voice. You could hear, I remember just hearing songs where like I would get goosebumps, and it was just, it takes something real to have that type of effect on somebody. And you can see that, you can hear that, you can feel that. I mean, music is an interesting thing, because we're not sure why it moves us, what exactly, why certain sounds or whatever moves us in a certain way or makes us feel something. But I mean, even in the music alone, with the layers of keyboards in the background, you just had this emotion in it, and then with your voice on top of that it just had this feel. Certain songs had a feel that, like, just even if you didn't like metal, you could feel it. Yeah. And I mean, I remember we'll go to local hole in the wall bars with a couple of friends, and me and my brother will go to the jukebox and start playing some music. And usually Fear Factory is one of the bands that we know are always on there. So we'll play some Fear Factory, and people who were just listening to country before we walked in are now like, yo, this is pretty cool, And it's just like it's one of those. It's just one of those bands that I feel like it breaks boundaries, because it's so good that even people who don't like metal can find something they like about it, Yeah,
because there's more to it than just the riffs. It's more to it than just metal. It really, everything is well thought out, and I think people see that. There's a real construction to it. There's a real passion behind the construction. There's a real song crafting. And, Dino and I really make sure that is part of our element, that we really, we work together, because his riffs inspire my vocals, and my vocals inspire more riffs. And that's how the song develops. And, I have a different voice from most singers, and so it has more of a melancholic side to it. It has a real different take on melody than most metal singers have. And so that is one thing that sets us apart. And Dino's riffing is just, it's something more than just a basic chunky riff. There's some rhythm in there that's just kind of, it's a rhythm that's almost hypnotic and primal.
And how do you write? Do you write by do you sit in a room and by yourself and listening to things that are inspiring? But I know most writers also, sometimes creativity and influences can come out of nowhere. You can write a book, or be reading a book, and next thing you know, you're writing shit down. And I'm sure you probably had little, verses and lyrics everywhere that you put together. And so sometimes, do you get a little bit of both? Do you sometimes sit down and can write a whole song? Or do you sometimes just take a lot of things and then put it together and it makes sense? And
it depends on my flow of creativity. Sometimes I will write a song completely, just lyrically, and I'll use what I can to what song we're building. Sometimes I'll have a book of writings, and some lines, just lines I write, and I just basically kind of piece things together that fit to create the concept. And then I rewrite it, and then I do a second edit, and then I do a third edit, and I just keep on going until it's okay. Now here we are. And it depends on the song, depends on the inspiration, depends on the flow of creativity. The creativity is a interesting beast. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. I get writer's block. And Dino gets writer's block. When you're lacking inspiration, then there's no creativity, and it's hard to explain why there's no inspiration. Maybe it's jaded, maybe it's just you see nothing that's inspiring to you. But when the two of us get together, we create an inspiration most of the time, and then there's that excitement. You're like, oh, okay, here it comes. And it just, it feels good. It's a great process, and it's a long process, but it's a good process. It's something that we've been dealing with for coming up on 25 years now, of how to write a song, and it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, and
especially when you've written as many songs as we have, it just gets a little bit harder, because it's trying to write, try not to write about the same thing, try not to write the same riff, try not to write the same melody. It gets difficult.
Oh yeah, and I could just imagine, because you probably have used so many great ideas that now it's just like, well, I'm running out of shit I haven't already done, and I'm sure that becomes, because again, you guys have written tons of songs. I've never counted the total amount of them, but I'm sure it's a lot. And
over 100.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have tons of stuff that was never released. So you've done tons of music, and I'm sure it gets to a point where it's like, oh, well, we started a song like this before, or we kind of had a song that had a verse that sound like this, so I can see how that can be very frustrating, because you kind of feel, like, and like you said, inspiration's an interesting thing, because you can't force it. You can tell yourself, oh, today I have 4 hours to sit down and do some writing and work on some music, and you'll sit down and get nothing done. And then another day you'll be busy, and then it'll hit you, and then all of a sudden you're probably on your phone writing down some shit or singing something, and so yeah, it's unpredictable. But like you said, it can come from books, it can come from movies, and obviously you guys, the whole idea of man versus machine, it was a huge theme, and it was always really interesting. How did you get into that, or what inspired you to write about that? Was it did you really think about this idea of what the future holds, and singularity theory, and Kurzweil, and all these people who transhumanism, and this idea of possibly living forever, downloading consciousness, because these are topics that I talk about on the show sometimes, because I find them interesting, and I think they
are interesting.
Yeah,
I was just talking to my kids about the future and future technology at the dinner table. It was just, we were talking about what's to come. And it's like, my son's like, in 1,000 years, the cell phone's gonna be like this. I'm like, in 10 years, there's not going to be a cell phone.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Well, does he know Moore's law? Because Moore's law, it might not take to 1,000 years. It's crazy, because usually when we think we know what the future is going to be like, we're usually fucking wrong every time. You look at movies that show the future, and then you look at when the future came, it's like they're completely off. So it's so unpredictable.
Yeah. It's for me. My fascination with the future and the technology and what it holds really started as a kid. Really, I've been a fan of science fiction since I can remember. When my father started, when I was watching, the original Star Trek series with my dad, even they were reruns then, but still I was watching them, and then I loved it. I was like, wow, this is really cool. The teleportation machine. I was like, wow, that's fantastic. Doors that open, just, the slide open and close. Just simple things. Then Star Wars, and then Close Encounters, and then I started reading books about UFOs and distant planets, and I started getting more reading science fiction books by Robert Heinlein, and then my high school years, I would read comic books too. Comic books always had some cool aspects. But in the first book I read in high school, it was mandatory reading. It was 1984, and so the year was 1984, and we had to read 1984.
Oh yeah.
And that book really set me on a whole nother level of the future. Because at that point I was more of a rebellious soul, a rebellious youth, and I became an anti-establishment, and that's how I saw George Orwell's take on this. It's totally anti-establishment, and to me,
and he's predicted the future in many cases.
Yeah, it has predicted the future. So did Aldous Huxley. So he predicted the future. Brave New World. He predicted the future greatly in that. Soma is an actual drug. It's they probably named it after him. But in the same year, I saw Blade Runner, and so I was like, oh my God, this anti-establishment ideas of mine of a dystopian society set into the future of Ridley Scott's take on Philip K. Dick's story. It was just blew me away, and that set me on. And then I saw Terminator. I'm like, oh my God, James Cameron, the best I'm a purist. The best Terminator film is the first one. He set out to create a science fiction horror film based on true technology, on theoretical technology at the time, and it's like, wow, that just blew me away. RoboCop, wow, amazing, and all that was all my ninth grade year. I'm like, and so that just has stuck with me, and I just kept reading more, and then in Fear Factory started developing that. When we wrote the album Fear Factory, it was all done, lyrically, everything was true, inspired. And after the record was mixed, I was asked by the label to what do they call it? They want you to describe each song, what it's about. Give you a summary. I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna make it interesting. So I wrote a synopsis of a story of each song, and I created a world within. I go, okay, imagine our hero, fighting against the machine not just being a mechanical machine, but the machine being the government that's bringing you down, is prejudice against you, its citizen. And so this is where I created a story, and it was sent off to the label, and they sent it off to the press, and that's where it started, the whole concept. And Dino was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. The next record will just go full concept. You write a story in it. And I'm like, fine. And that was Obsolete.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, I remember Obsolete being a story. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where it started. And because of that, people started giving me books, giving me books about the fall of, the demise of humanity, and the perpetuation of technology, and how technology will advance. Basically, what's the word? It just is quantified like every year, like triple.
Yeah.
So it's
I think that's is that Moore's law? Yeah.
Well, I read this in Ray Kurzweil, and I think he probably quoted Moore's law. Where it's, it starts with an E. Oh my God. No, whatever.
Yeah, don't worry. I do that shit all the time on this show. I constantly get halfway through a quote, then forget it.
Exponentially grows every year. So that exponentially was the word I was looking for, not quantifiably, but it works. So I just started reading, and the more I read, the more I just became more into the future technology, and seeing it come to fruition in just tiny bits, and just seeing it happen. I'm like, wow, it's happening. And so I enjoy, as an observer of technology, and as I don't want to say I'm a professional science fiction writer, but I've dabbled, and I think things I've written about and things I've come to write about, I've come to see happen. And like, it's really interesting. And so, yeah, this whole coming full circle to the new album, Genexus, we had to really move forward. And it's like, okay, what are we gonna write about now? How are we gonna move the future forward? And so it was a real task. And I reread about Ray Kurzweil's theory of the singularity happening in 2045. I'm like, I see the seeds of it now. Let's do this. And just went full forward with transhumanism. Transhumanism is based, the singularity is based in transhumanism, because that's where it's all coming together. So, yeah, it was quite a story to come up with. It wasn't easy, but I think we created something that's gonna, the future we'll see happen.
Yeah,
and we see it happening now.
Yeah, they have that conference, the 2045 conference, where it's like that Russian billionaire that I think puts it together, and they that I think that's why it's called the 2045, like you said, because they think that singularity is going to happen then. And I mean, what's your opinion on it? We're at a good age. I always say, like, people who are a little younger than I am, they grew up with the technology that we have today, and they never got to, that's when I commented on the wine. One thing that I love doing is just having a drink with some friends, and I have a son. I had my first child in February, so we have a lot of other couples over and we sit around and have a drink. I like to smoke. Thank you. Yeah, I know you got kids, so it's all about the journey. 3. Oh shit. And I'm sure having kids, similar to yourself, I'm sure it kind of influenced you or motivated you a little bit to also help with the change or a change of perspective. And I mean, this podcast, I started it before I had my son, but I really felt like if one day I want to have kids, it's really important to me, even if I don't accomplish much, but to at least attempt to leave this earth better than I received it. And like I tell people all the time, you'll be much happier looking back at your life knowing that you attempted and you did everything you could and you made an effort than looking back and saying that I wish I pursued it further. I mean, you meet plenty of people that say, I wish I chased my dream a little more. You don't meet anybody who says, I wish I gave up sooner, So, right. Yeah, so I think that's...
And you're educating people in a way, you're introducing them to new thoughts and experiences and to different ideas, and that's education. And if people can take the time and see what happens and just listen to somebody else's perspective, you're offering a different perspective for someone who didn't expect it. And that's something they'll come back with. And who knows, you probably are inspiring quite a few people out there with the people you interview and with what you are doing. No doubt about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, but it's similar to you guys. I mean, and that's the thing. Like everybody is influenced by something else, and every great mind was influenced by another great mind, and that's why it is important, and that's why this show to me is important, because just like yourself, and that's what you did. I was a young kid. I mean, I'm only 30, so I'm still young, and music like yours, and I remember 1 Minute Silence was also another band that I really remembered, and I had Yap on.
I toured with them.
Yeah, I know you. Yeah, and I had Yap on, who Barry Yap, the singer, and real cool guy.
Intelligent man, and touring with him was really exciting because I learned a lot of cool shit from that guy.
Oh yeah, it was you and him were like two. I remember when I started this podcast, I'm like, two people that I know will be interesting as fuck to have on will be Burton and Yap, because you guys, I mean, just from your music and your lyrics, and I'm like, you couldn't tell you were deep thinkers, and you had well thought out opinions and perspectives, and were curious, and I mean, isn't that what? Yeah, and that's what got us from being monkeys in a tree to having what we have today was curiosity and wanting more and trying to figure things out. And he's a really...
I admired Yap a lot. His spirit and his ideas and his concepts were just like, wow, that is so... It's like more punk rock than any punk rocker I've ever met. It was like, you are anti-establishment. You're the real deal because you're going out there and making a difference. Like, you're out there protesting. You're out there, putting up bulletins. You're out there, handing out flyers, and you're like really doing what you believe in, like not just musically in a music genre, but you're going out there and hitting the streets.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I was like so admirable. So,
well, I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you like Rage Against the Machine, then there's an Irish Rage Against the Machine called 1 Minute Silence you might want to check out, because
absolutely,
they're similar in style, but he was such an intelligent dude, and so many songs that he had that even I remember being a kid, and similar to the Fear Factory, there's the unfortunate thing that you get in these bands that are almost more advanced intellectually than you are as a kid. So I remember growing up and understanding Fear Factory songs like 10 years after they came out, because when I first heard them, I didn't really understand what the lyrics meant or what, and it's fun because you go back, and as you evolve and you progress as a person and you learn a little bit more, and like I always say, like every year I think I have shit figured out and I'm pretty smart, and then the following year I'm like, dude, I was a dumbass last year. So it seems like you just and you should constantly self-reflect and progress.
Yeah, exactly. And
I'm sure music forces that. I'm sure music.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I force myself, lyrically, I force myself, I have this moment in time to have my, my voice heard through my words, and I've always been writing even before I was in a band, but I have this opportunity, so I don't want to waste this opportunity with just writing just a inane, wasteful just moments. I just want to create something thought-provoking. I want to create something provocative to, at one point, if they're not thinking about it now, at one point they're going to come back to it and it's like, oh, that's what he meant.
Exactly. And that's happened.
And that's cool, and as long as it's there, they have the opportunity to go back and say, okay, this is what that's about. It's when maybe their mind is old enough to is at that point where they can, are ready to understand, are ready to take it in, and ready to see a different perspective.
Yeah, it's similar to reading a book a couple years later again, and then understanding the book better, 5 years later than when you initially read it, because the things you've learned, throughout that journey. And so yeah, that's awesome. Well, what's your opinion on maybe the lack of music with a meaning and the lack of do you ever think about that? And
oh my God, I think about it all the time. I was thinking about it before this interview. I was like, I have a Twitter account, and a lot of times what I post is articles about the music industry or about space or technology, right?
Yeah, I follow you. So that's the cool thing about, you're like one of the few musicians that actually are worth following, because you don't just post you're on tour or check out our merch. Yeah,
it's like I read a good article, I want to share it, and it's like, this is what I'm reading, I think you should read this too and understand. And everything I post about the music industry is like how difficult it is for a working artist to survive. The last article I posted about that was about Iggy Pop, how Iggy Pop is even having a hard time surviving. And I was like, God, how the fuck, why should I even waste my fucking time doing music when bullshit is completely like awarded major amounts of like attention, major amounts of media is plowed onto them, and they're just flowing in money, flowing in tours, flowing in everything. I'm just like, and I'm here doing something real, something meaningful, and they want everything for free. I'm like, I gotta exist too. So it's just like, I think about the music industry all the time and how I gotta struggle, and I feel for new artists these days, because it's like, wow, it's hard for, I'm glad I was around and was able to hit the, grassroots before the internet. Now it's just so saturated, and just, it's just no one can make any living off of it anymore. And so I just get saddened by such bullshit that gets popular these days, I can understand my kids loving it who are all under the age of 9. I can understand that, but for a grown up to like the kind of music my kids like, and like,
I say that all the time. Really? I'm like, you and your kids shouldn't have the same playlist on your fucking iPod. Like when you guys are listening to the same thing, something's wrong. Like that's just my opinion.
Thank you. It's like, it's just BS, and the state of it, it's been bad in the music. It's been like that in the music industry for a long time. Bubblegum music from the 50s was terrible, but it wasn't as saturated as it is now. It's just like, it's so everywhere, and it's like, God, the music, like, how can I don't even call him an artist or a musician, how can a figure like Justin Bieber get so huge? Oh yeah, because he has millions of prepubescent female followers.
Exactly.
Who are, hormones are raging.
And will scream at until their mother buys them tickets to go to the show, and will and it's funny because I have a little theory, because I've always wondered, I'm like, why is pop music and all this really simple crappy music so popular? And it could have something. I've heard the theory that they say that because record companies, because some people are like, well, if people didn't like it, then the record labels wouldn't promote it. But there is something to say about the fact that if you play something enough, they say that your brain will actually confuse the fact that it's something familiar with something you like. So if you hear it enough, you actually think that you like it, when really all you're doing is just being you're familiar with it.
You're being brainwashed.
Yeah, you're being brainwashed. And I also think that
the same adage is, if you tell the same lie enough, people start believing it.
Joseph Goebbels.
There you go.
Yeah, that's true. It's propaganda. Yeah, absolutely.
It works
the same way. Oh, it is, absolutely.
You have to have either like some, you have to be, have a certain look, or you have to have some stupid gimmick to, dress up like zombies or something like that, and and that's your gimmick, and it's all flash in the pan kind of thing, and it's all flash and no substance, and the labels. Yeah, oh, but if people don't like it, then they won't buy it. But you're shoving it down people's throats so they don't have any other choice. They're believing in it, and you're putting the money behind it because you know you can push this crap on people and they will buy it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And then you have the copycat artists. One artist comes out, does well, and then there's about 20 other artists that sound just like them, look just like them, that come out and they push that. And you know, it's I guess it's a bit of everybody's fault. I mean, the people. I mean, I wonder how much of it is it too that like in this society that we live in today, that we're so overstressed, we're so overworked that our brain, we're always trying to find like the easiest way to do things. That's why we came up with like the hammer and the wheel and all these, because we're trying to find, you know, the path of less resistance. And I wonder, with music, we're so stressed that listening to something that provokes thought, or something that would take some analyzing to understand, is becomes work. And then listening to the simple beat and the simple song that just repeats the chorus 1,000 times is just easier for us to listen to. I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Absolutely, it's, you know, it's all part of a formula. You know, it's you know, there's a primal instinct just to, you know, I don't care what they're saying. I like the beat, you know, or it's like some stupid little catchy, you know, line, you know, that everyone likes.
You can never write a hit like the ones that get as popular as they do, because you would hear it and say, this is dog shit. and you're like, no, what? Like, let me whip, let me nay. You're like, you'd be like, this is dog shit. Like, I can't sing this. This is, you know, but.
And I never would, you know.
Yeah. I always wonder, I'm like, I wish I could be a fly on the wall while they're writing this crap, and just like, who's the fucking idiot who's saying, yeah, this is it. This is it. It's like, some of it's so bad. I'm like, how could you even write this and actually sing this in the studio and actually think that this is going to be a hit? And then the crazy part, and it does become a hit. That's the thing that drives me crazy.
They don't have a soul. It's the same people who sell their asses out for commercials. As you know, as Bill Hicks said, you know, any musician or artist, you know, worth his cents in gold sells his ass to Satan to suck Satan's cock to, you know, to go do commercials. And it's like, you know, he only gave Willie Nelson a pass because Willie Nelson do IRS.
Yeah.
Willie Nelson can do Taco Bell, but all those other artists, they could go to hell. It's like,
yeah, and he also said that anybody who does marketing kill themselves, you know, and it's marketing's really the root of all evil. When you really look at like the story of Edward Bernays, and you know, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and you know, his uncle wanted to understand the brain and how it works, and Edward Bernays wanted to understand how to manipulate the brain. And I don't know if you're familiar with Edward Bernays. He wrote the book Propaganda. Noam Chomsky, Manufacturing Consent, he refers to Edward Bernays' work quite often, because he took propaganda, because that word was obviously looked down upon after the World War II. He changed it to public relations, but used the same tactics and its same techniques, same everything. Right. Yeah, I
just learned something.
Yeah, Edward Bernays is a really interesting character, because he's one of those guys, and that's where Noam Chomsky got the idea of manufacturing consent, because Edward Bernays had this idea that people, for the most part, don't know what's influencing them. This idea that we think we know what's influencing us, but we really don't. There's things that we're hearing, certain colors, certain sounds, certain things, and it's all having an impact on our perspectives, but we might not actually know what's happening. And so, like, for example, back in the day, if they wanted to sell you a car, they would tell you its features. Oh, this one has power windows, gets better fuel mileage. Now they focus on the image. You see a Cadillac commercial, it's a guy in a nice suit. It's a guy with a good-looking wife. He has a luxury watch. It seems like he has himself put together. So what you're selling isn't the car. What you're selling is, if you buy this car, people will look at you like this. This is the image you're selling.
This is the image you're selling, and this is what you want to look like.
Exactly.
And, you know, cigarette commercials been doing that for years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
the worst cigarette commercials. You know, it's you know, that's the whole propaganda or public relations, or you know, advertising agency. You know, selling sex, selling an image that people find attractive. It's something that is better than the life that they're living now. And you know, perhaps that's what the music that is popular. You know, it's selling something that is fascinating, or is something that people want to have. They want this hip hop lifestyle with all the chicks are dancing around the pool half naked, and they want the gold chains, and they want the big house, and we're driving down the road in a big car, and it's.
But none of that stuff makes you happy. I mean, you see celebrities who are, pill overdoses, suicide. I mean, they have all the material things in the world that you think will make you happy. And it's funny because I quote Hatebreed, satisfaction's the death of desire, because it's a beautiful just quote about the idea that you really, it's the desire that keeps you motivated, and then once you're satisfied, you move on to the next thing. So it doesn't matter how much you want, or you think you want that brand new Mercedes. The second you buy it and the new one comes out, you're not going to want it anymore. Once you have it, the desire's gone and you're satisfied.
Exactly.
And in America, they've done studies on how we're one of the countries that have the most materialistic things. We have tons of just shit. People just have tons of stuff. We're always buying new clothes, new whatever, and but our happiness levels are far lower than most countries. And and I think, and they say, I think it's 50 or 60 grand, that if you make more than that, basically everything levels out. You don't get any happier. And what I think is not that money makes you happy up to 50 grand. I think it relieves stress, because I think that, and I think people confuse the two. When you're broke, you're stressed. How am I going to pay my bills? And I mean, you're a musician, so I'm sure you had plenty of those days.
Daily.
Yeah, and how am I going to put food in my family's mouths? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And that stresses you out. And then once you have enough where you at least can eat and pay your bills and you're comfortable, everything else is just bullshit. It's just toppings. It's just extra. If you have a $300,000 house, or you have $1 million house, are you any happier? You're not any happier, you being a father can relate to this, because I say that we should learn from our kids, because I think when we're young, we understand that experiences are much more important than material things. Because if you give a kid a toy, a really expensive toy, usually they forget about it soon after and they don't care.
Soon after.
Yeah. But if you bring them to a game, or you throw the ball with them, shoot some hoops with them, then they remember that for a long time. They remember experiences. That's what truly makes them happy. And what I say is, as humans, as we get older, that doesn't change. It's still experiences that make us happy, but marketing and all these other things end up brainwashing to make us believe that no, it's the material things that make us happy. But we're still those kids, because when you get together with your friends and you talk about that time when you guys got hammered after a show and whatever, and Dino puked all over the place, then that you guys laugh about that, and you don't and those are the things that will stick with you forever. It's not the expensive new microphone you got or whatever, and so I think we can learn a lot from these still not yet brainwashed children and what they the things they enjoy in life.
And I try, we're doing our best not to have them within that environment. We don't have we have a television, but we don't have direct TV, we don't have cable, we just subscribe to Netflix, we watch whatever we want to watch, we have DVDs, they read a lot, they play outside a lot, so they don't have any video games, so they just they're left to their using their brain more, not being brainwashed. And even I see adults are my age, your age, who they're constantly looking at their phone, playing a game, talking to somebody else, and it's they're brainwashed and thinking that what they have right here in this little palm of their hand is more important than what's going on around them. My gosh, what really irritates me at shows these days while I'm on stage is seeing this in front of me. It's like they're watching the camera, they're watching their phone and not watching the show, and they're watching everything. I'm like, would you just live in the moment?
You might as well watch it on YouTube, because it's the same thing. You're watching it through a video instead of being in the experience of being in the moment. Yeah. I'm getting to a point where I'm like, should I have everyone drop their cell phones at the door, and or we don't go on stage, or just like what somehow I wish I had an EMP kind of device where I could just like just short out everybody's equipment, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything. And it's like that's part of the brainwashing. They're more interested in what's happening on this tiny little screen than what's going on in the actual huge picture right in front of them. Oh, absolutely.
they're losing the moments, they're losing time, they're losing reality, and they think this in their hand is reality, and it's not, and that's part of brainwashing. You got to have the new iPhone because it's the best. I'm like, well, the last one was supposedly the best, so why is this one better?
And do you need it? And that's the thing. Like, okay, so maybe it's a tad faster, but do you really, like, is it life-changing? Like, did you ever have an issue where you're like, oh, this is, life or death, this needs to load quickly? No. So if it's a tad quicker, is it really worth paying another $600 for a new cell phone that's just a tad different than the last one? It is. And I think the nice thing about growing up without the technology is that we kind of got to enjoy the simple things. I always say, like, I got really lucky that at a young age I started figuring out that it's, wine, for example, the smell of wine, tasting it, just sitting around with some friends and having a couple glasses of wine and using these senses that we usually turn off. I mean, usually we're overstimulated by the phone and we're in, like you said, in this virtual reality of a world. And we don't pay attention to smells and tastes and things that are really enjoyable that we just ignore most of the time. And I mean, people take for granted just having a good drink and a good home cooked meal, or going to a restaurant having a good meal. I mean, you go to Europe and people sit down and they don't have to-go cups. Why? Because if you're thirsty, you sit down and have a drink. You have a coffee. You sit at you could end up sitting at a coffee shop all afternoon just bullshitting, and enjoying company. Yeah, I mean, you travel a lot of the world touring and stuff, and I know you'll be going to Europe soon, right? In November.
That's right.
And
November for the Demanufacture tour through Europe and UK.
Is there any countries that you really enjoy going to that you've had some good experiences in?
I love Germany. I love Spain. I love the Czech Republic. We're going to Moscow. I've been to Moscow a few times, but we're going to Russia again. But there's one place we've never been that we're going to for the very first time. And that's Tel Aviv. And I'm really looking forward to going to Tel Aviv. I've heard a lot of cool stuff about that place. And, I've had friends from Tel Aviv who've lived there, from there. And they go, yeah, it's like, it's like Los Angeles and New York together, on the Dead Sea. I think it's the Dead Sea.
Yeah, I believe so. It is when you go there, do you actually have time to like experience the country and you give yourself enough time in between shows and stuff, or do you have to travel and you really don't have enough?
Probably, with my luck, I probably won't have any time to do anything.
Have you had time to experience certain countries and kind of get to know the people and stuff?
Oh yeah, I've had time to hang out in the Netherlands. I spent a couple weeks in Amsterdam one time. I spent some time in Spain. I love Paris. I spent time. My wife and we spent some time in Paris a few years ago. We stayed there for like 3 months.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love Paris.
Isn't the lifestyle there completely different?
Completely different. I love it. I get it. It's like I had to live there and experience it firsthand to really understand the Parisian mentality, and it's like, I get it now. It's rad.
Yeah, it's about enjoying life, and it's about doing
Absolutely.
this. I have family in Portugal, and my family here will be like, oh, your cousins in Portugal, they're lazy, they don't want to work as hard as we do here, this and that, and I'm like, are they lazy, or have they figured it out? Because I'm like, if you ask me, I think they figured it out. You don't need to work 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week. You don't need to. I mean, what do you accomplish doing that? I mean, so you make more money. You end up, because I always say you can make more money. You can't make more time. Those weekends that you work and those moments you miss with your kids and your family or your friends, you're never going to get that back. Once it's gone forever. And and those are the things you remember. Those are the things that are important. People in Europe, you have, from noon to whatever, till 2 in the afternoon, most of everything's closed. On weekends, things are closed. It's like, that's the way it should be, because you should be spending time with your friends and family and enjoying life. And maybe people wouldn't be on pills, antidepressants in America. And, I think we're 50% of the world's like antidepressants, something ridiculous. Yeah. It's just,
America is too stressed on trying to make money, so they need to work more. But that's not the source of happiness. They don't understand that. They understand in European countries, it's like, the quality of life is more important than the money you make. So we'll take care. They've worked out a system where it's like, okay, we can take care of you. You be part of the system, but you know what? Enjoy your life. And I'm gonna be 50 in 4 years, and my kids are getting to this age where like, God, I want to be around them more. It's like my youngest daughter is 6. My son's going to be 8 in December, and my daughter is, oh gosh, she's going to be 10. She's going to be 10 in February, I think.
And I'm sure it flew by.
Yeah, she's going to be 10 in February, and it flew by. And I was like, I need to spend more time with my kids. And touring all the time, and it's I have to do it, but it's like, it's something that it's becoming harder and harder to survive on these days, because back to the music industry, no one is supporting artists anymore. No one's supporting the music industry anymore. Everyone expects everything for free.
Yeah,
and because it's so saturated, no one's paying for shows anymore.
Well, it's I don't know if you've watched that documentary Artifact about the 30 Seconds of Mars drama with their record label. It's a really good documentary.
I've seen that.
Yeah, and it's just, I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that bands like that are struggling to get paid, or they're selling out these huge shows, but yet they're not making money, or the record label's at least crying about not making money.
God, if what's his name in 30 Seconds of Mars?
Oh, Jared Leto.
Jared Leto. If Jared Leto if he ever heard my story, that would be a real documentary.
I will say, I'm like, this motherfucker's done a lot of big movies. I'm pretty sure he's not broke. Maybe maybe he's sticking up for his bandmates, and I get, and there's a lot of bands that go through the same shit who don't have isn't a celebrity in films and stuff, and don't have.
The Fear Factory story would put 30 Seconds Mars to shame.
Oh, I'm sure.
It makes 30 Seconds of Mars look like a comedy. The Fear Factory is like, the story is just like unbelievably like the shit we've been through and what we still go through. It's just like, really? It just doesn't end.
Yeah. Well, do you think the music industry just hasn't evolved to the new technology? Because I know, like I remember Ace Frehley was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was kind of saying similar thing like yourself about how nobody buys music anymore, this and that. And I wonder if there's a way of the record label or just music industry in general changing, because like the streaming thing, for example, now that people use iHeartRadio and all these other apps, Pandora, and I know it's kind of unfair the way they work, because you guys really don't get much money from that, right?
The whole thing it's not just the music industry, it's the whole culture. From going from the listener to the buyer to the music industry to the technology. The culture itself, a person sees chocolate on the table with no price on it, he's going to take it. Hey, free candy, awesome. And because of technology, and the labels not really keeping, the labels haven't really kept up with this. They didn't expect technology. The copyright laws were written in the 40s. So this has nothing to, whatever's written in the 40s had no clue about the internet, what's happening now. It's a whole basket of issues that need to be dealt with, with the copyright laws. So artists can have an artist can have a living wage, right now it's not even a living wage. It's not even a wage at all. We need to be paid properly for art. I say to people who pirate music or download it for free, I'm like, okay, so you think it's okay to, take my money for, take my art for free after, I've, spent a lot of my own money on it. It's like, well, it's not really your money. It's like, oh, really? So if I go in and take your TV, it's not really your money? I could walk in your house and take something that you spent money on. I can have it. So, well, it's not the same. Oh, it isn't. It is the same thing, because I'm just taking from the label. It's like, no, you take from the label, you take from me. Shit rolls downhill.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But do you think it has something to do, because I have this theory of how society and culture is changing into a world of we're basically, I think, and this is the pros and cons of this. The thing is, kids are growing up today with the internet, and they're used to getting everything for free. They're used to getting music videos for free. They're used to getting music for free. They're used to getting books for free. I mean, there's absolutely nothing you can't find online for free. And information, I mean, when we were growing up, I mean, you either had to go to a library, find the book, or you had to buy it, or you had to, you know, there's just whatever. There wasn't as much free information, free entertainment for free. And now
we still got information.
Yeah.
But we still got it. You know, we still got our entertainment.
But do you think that the dollar and money in general, like they don't understand the concept of it? Like they're almost like they're born in a society where they're used to not getting so much for free that this idea of paying for stuff almost seems, you know, weird and out of the ordinary.
Part of it.
You know, and
part of it, you know, there's virtual money as well. There's a lot of times they don't even have to exchange real money to get anything if they do pay for it.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
It's like, well, I downloaded it, you know, Bitcoin or PayPal, or it's like, you know, they just added, you know, they're using their parents' credit card that's on the account. It's like, oh, I'm going to download it. Here you go. Free. You know, but a lot of times they're stealing it, and they don't even realize, oh, it's free. I'm like, no, it's stolen. You know, it's not the same. It's you know, it's a whole culture of the mentality has changed, needs to change. People need to be educated. The copyright laws need to be changed. The music industry needs to step it up and figure out how to do things. I just read today that YouTube is going to set a new tier of their service where you're going to have to pay for new things. So it's going to a whole new tier, and that's going to upset a lot of people. It's like, what? I got to pay now? It's like, go for it.
Do you think some of it also has to do with the fact that income inequality and how not just artists, but I think people in general are tight on money, and when there's so much free stuff out there that it's hard to get people to spend their hard-earned money on stuff when they know they can get similar stuff for free? I mean, do you think that's
what we used to do? I mean, it's like, you know, you saved up your money to get something you really wanted, and then that made the quality much better. You know, it's like
I still buy albums. I buy CDs all the time because I think that you lose something by downloading it. You don't get because I mean, as an artist, you have image, you have artwork, lyrics, all these things. I remember even just enjoying opening up, just seeing who Fear Factory thanked in the thank yous. I'm like, oh, they're boys with these guys. You know, like all these just silly little things that you enjoyed when you bought an album. I mean, the only thing I hated was, you know, it was really hard just to open because it was like double taped on top, and it was a fucking pain. You had to just get a CD open. But you know, once it's open, you're excited. You're opening up the booklet. You're reading the lyrics. You're seeing all that stuff, and you're getting a feel of the artist before you even put in the CD. You know, you're
Absolutely.
getting, you know, and I think you lose that, you know, and to
totally lose that. And you lose connection with the artist.
Yeah, and vinyl's making a comeback a little bit, but obviously I don't know, you know, how much money there is in vinyl, but
it's not much, but it's still viable. People are, you know, they're reissuing turntables. They're making new types of turntables. You know, I still have a turntable. I still buy vinyl. You know, it's something that, you know, vinyl to me is still the best format because you would sit down, you would put it on, and it wasn't just listening to music, it was a ritual. And you had to listen to it because you had to know when to turn over the record. Say, oh, the record's over, I gotta turn it over. And you would pick it up, and you'd have this thing in your hands, you see the grooves, you could actually see the sounds, and you'd have this big piece of artwork in front of you, and you could see details, and you're like, wow, this is rad, you know? It's like, you know, a lot of that is lost, and I think there's a new generation that's finding that, rediscovering that, and they find it's like, oh, I get it now. You know, this is really cool.
Well, it's no different than reading a Kindle book and actually buying the book and holding it and having it in your hands. Like, I still don't understand how people can read a book on a Kindle. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't. You know, it feels like I'm just online, you know, searching the web and just reading articles. You know, it's
Absolutely.
There's something about getting the actual book that is nice. And I know for the younger listeners, the books are these paper things that have words in them. They don't know what the hell books are, but But it's funny how that's, times have changed. And I think that's the nice thing about being our age, is that we kind of, it's almost like we've been in the outside looking in, being able to see this transition. And I'm curious to see what future, because this really is almost like a human experiment. I feel like technology is advancing quicker than the human is, because you even look, like you talked about phones. I think we're just overstimulated. We have these lights and sounds, and I mean, our brains have never been that overstimulated ever, and that's why
everyone's definitely everyone's overstimulated, definitely.
And that's why you can't sit down and read a book, because reading a book doesn't stimulate you. It doesn't give you those happy drugs, the serotonin and all those happy drugs that, staring at the screen with blue lights and all this stuff gives you.
It's not an instantaneous high or an instantaneous
satisfaction
reaction that you get. You have to, when you sit down and read a book, you have to turn the pages. They don't understand what it is to become part of the story and to really follow it. And it's like getting to the meat of the story. And then that feeling when, I'm reading a book now and I'm on the verge of getting into the meat of the story. I'm like, oh my God, I can feel it. And that feeling when you're reading the story and all of a sudden you're like, bam, you're like, oh, here it is. And just then the rate of your speed reading just increases, like, oh, you don't even want to put it down. And that's what that is a high that you don't get, that people are losing when they don't read anything.
And I think you store information better when you read it, because you're doing it slower, you're comprehending it a little better. I think I've done times where I've researched stuff for a show, or I have a topic that I want to talk about, and I'll go online for like an hour and just look at this, and then this will lead me to this other website or this other book, this other article. And then after an hour, I'm like, I don't fucking remember any of that shit. It's like it almost happened too quickly, where you're not like sitting down in a calm atmosphere, maybe in bed before you fall asleep and just reading, and it's quiet, and you're just scrolling through things, and like you said, you're overstimulated, where your brain just can't process all that information. Where reading a book, it seems like it's a little easier to actually process and remember what happened in that book. Yeah, I guess there was no question in that. That was just
no, there's no question. That's the way it is. It's like people need to read more, and the Kindle batteries are going to go dead, but with a book, you can just put it down for a week. You can put it down for a few hours, and you pick it up, and you're back to where you are, and it's like, and you can go back to a page easily. It's like, oh, reread that part. Okay, what did he say a couple chapters back? What? Oh, okay.
Are with the whole idea of the future and then singularity and all? I mean, are you optimistic about the future? Even though obviously it seems like you feel like we still have a lot of working out to do, especially in the music industry, with incorporating technology to make things work. But are you optimistic with the future? I mean, this idea of like, what is his name, Aubrey de Grey, and these people who are trying, this idea of living forever and maybe downloading consciousness at one time, and then it goes into the question, well, what the fuck's human? What is a human?
Well, I will define what human. I am optimistic, because I believe that there's still a mass of the society that believes in humanity. And to me, what humanity is taking care of each other. And the moment that we all lose that our side of humanity, that's when I lose all hope.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly defined, because I completely agree. I think that human nature and tendency is to, I think a lot of people like to think that, especially capitalist people like to think that, human tendency is to win and get ahead and look after ourselves. But I think when somebody falls on the ground, in a mall, people stop and help, and they don't care about what religion they are, what color they are, what their personal ideologies or philosophies are. You help people, and I think that's deep rooted in us. And I think that a lot of these things, a lot of these labels, are used just to separate us. And you, who've traveled the world, that you meet people from all over the world. You see, there's a lot more similarities between us all than there are differences.
It's a small world, man. It is. There's a lot of us, but it's a small world, and we're all connected. And as humanity, as humans, we need to take care of each other in every level. We need to take care of each other mentally. We need to take each other physically. We need to take care of each other sociologically. psychologically. It's just we have to take care of each other, because if we don't, humanity will fall. And if the machines want to take over, it's not going to be easy, because humanity will be already so apathetic they don't give a shit. And so it won't be a war. It'll be a simple takeover. It'll ease into it. It's like, oh, we'll take care of you, where we actually become the slave, the slave, while the machines are actually taking care of everything. We're just like pets.
Yeah. You ever see the series Black Mirror on Netflix?
Fuck yeah.
Oh, great. You want to talk about a scary future. They did a great job, because a lot of that stuff.
They did a great job. I love that series.
Yeah.
There was only 6 that I saw last time, but
yeah, it was really short. I didn't even know there were 6. I think I only saw 3 or 4 of them.
It is a very small number.
Yeah.
But I saw them all. I'm like, dang, this is rad. It's like, like a futuristic version of the Twilight Zone and Night Gallery mixed together.
Yeah, and the thing is, it was futuristic, but it wasn't that far into the future where it was unrelatable. Like, you could see,
right.
like this could absolutely happen in the near future. The idea of like just scrolling through your memories and sharing it with your friends. Like, and they did such a good job with the acting and stuff. Like, this could definitely be the near future. And yeah, there's definitely pros and cons with it. I think the idea of people losing, I guess, money not being a huge motivator. Like, you hear a lot about kids who are getting out of college today, how they're more concerned about how much time they're going to have off, vacation time, and then they are concerned about how much money they're going to make. And I think that's probably linked to the fact that people are growing up with so much free shit that they don't feel the need to need a lot of money. So I think that's like kind of a good thing that's happening.
It's an interesting concept, because they've grown up, living in their parents' house and going to school, that they haven't realized what the real world is all about. Once they get out on their own, it's like, oh, I got to pay my own bills. Oh, I got to pay for water. I got to pay for electricity. I got to pay for gasoline. I got to pay for food. I got to, I got to pay for my video games. It's like.
Yeah, and you almost don't the concept of money just seems like, like it's not needed, like money's just, oh yeah, no, I can do without money, and they don't realize that there's people like yourself and myself who have to do jobs we hate, or not. Well, I have to do jobs I hate, which is why I love talking to people like you who've actually, had this, was doing something because they're passionately in love with it and then made a career out of it. And I think that's awesome. But I think that we do have to. I think that in other words, I think if we're looking in an optimistic perspective on people not having this respect for money like future or past generations had, I think it's the fact that we could be going towards a world where money isn't a motivator. So we know that money usually motivates people to stab each other in the back, be cutthroat. You deal with the business world. We have a little family-owned construction company, so I unfortunately deal in the corporate world all the time, and I fucking hate it. I hate it because
corporate sucks, man.
Well, because you to be successful, you have to be an asshole, and I'm not an asshole, and it's one of those things where in the corporate world, it's rewarding to be a dick. Like the people who are the most successful. Isn't it? Yeah.
It's like the bigger asshole you are, the more the head you are going to get in that world.
Exactly. And so
like president of the United States or governor or mayor of this town, you have to be a complete asshole just to get that kind of power. And
yeah, you got to be able to you have to be able to kick babies in the face and do whatever it takes to get ahead. It's just and I think that what ends up happening is that people see that. And then it's like, well, I want to have that big house. I want to have that. And it's like, well, if I'm nice to people, I'll never get it. But this person who's really successful and working his way up on in the corporate ladder, who is, screwing the little guy to get ahead or to get that bonus at the end of the year, he's the one I want to be. And it's just, so it's definitely one of those things where I think we're a product of our environment, and that's what you see. And when you see the most successful people being, borderline psychopaths, because I always say this about addiction, how money is the one addiction that you can have all the symptoms of addiction, but nobody calls you an addict. Like,
it's acceptable.
Yeah, it's acceptable. It's socially acceptable. This idea that, but if you're addicted to coke, heroin, alcohol, it takes over your life. It's the only thing you think of. Every morning you wake up, it's what you're thinking of getting more of. And if you have all those symptoms for money, it's completely acceptable. But if it was alcohol or something else, it wouldn't be. And but it's the same symptoms, you know.
Just gave me an idea for another story. Talk about a guy to write a story about a guy just talking about his addiction. And then till the end of his addiction, you don't find out till the end that it's money he's talking about.
That's a good way of doing it. Yeah, because it would put in perspective how the symptoms are exactly the same.
Wake up, I need more.
Exactly. and it is, and but because it's socially acceptable and it's rewarding to be. But you look at it, like I always say, if me and you were millionaires, we'd be sitting on a beach having some wine, bullshitting about the singularity theory. Okay, you know, we would not be Donald Trump, Mitt Romney, or whoever else that's a multi-billionaire going to business. Yeah, I mean, going to business. Why are you still going to business conferences? You're all right. Your kids are all right. Your great grandkids are all right. Your great grands are all right. They'll never have to work in their lives. What the fuck is motivating you to go to these meetings, to take conference calls, to invest in this, invest in that? It's an addiction. Like, and anybody else who wasn't addicted to money and they're looking for fulfillment in the wrong places. Anybody else who was like that, you know, who was, you know, normal mentally would not, you know. But the thing is, that's the other thing. If you're not addicted to money, would you ever get there in the first place? To that, you know, it'd be much harder to get to that point where you have the ability.
I think there are people who are not addicted to money. You know, the people who realize they just need it to survive. And there's people who are so addicted to it that they will sacrifice and compromise everything just to get it.
And there's a good book called Drive. I think the subtitle is "You'll Be Surprised What Really Motivates People," and it's a book about how we assume that money is the biggest motivator, and it really isn't. I mean, people like yourself, you didn't start writing music and playing music because you thought you're going to get rich. You did it because you loved it, and the money came afterwards. And a lot of the greatest minds in history were motivated by their work. Nikola Tesla, for example, you know, he was motivated by his work. He was motivated by trying to make technology that can help the human race, and that's what people tend to lose. That, you know, they have this idea that without money we're not motivated, and I don't think that's true at all. Because you know, if that was true, then throw away all your favorite books, all your favorite paintings, all your favorite music, all your favorite arts, because all your favorite comedians. You know, Bill Hicks, George Carlin. I mean, these guys were motivated.
That's right.
Lenny Bruce. I mean, these guys were motivated by their work. The money came afterwards. You know, and
they didn't, and the money didn't dictate what they did after that.
Exactly.
And they still did what they wanted to. They still held true to their beliefs, to their you know, to what they felt was right. And you know, money never really, a lot of money never came in, but I was able to survive, able to support my family. But I'll still stay true to my beliefs. I'll still stay true, and I won't compromise what I believe, what my art should be, you know, for the sake of more money.
Yeah, and that's really important, and usually those are the artists that stick around and have as many albums as Fear Factory have, and still, you know, bands like you guys and Machine Head and these bands that are, and then actually you influence bands like Machine Head, so
yeah.
You know, the fact that, you know, it's 20 years later you can still come out with an album that you can say is one of your best albums blows my fucking mind. I mean,
well, thank you. We're very proud of it. You know, we worked real hard on it, and I think it's a new classic. It really is.
And it's funny because you're one of those bands that I don't even listen to the album once it's out. I just buy it because you guys are so consistently, you know, you're so consistent that it's like, well, I know I'm gonna like it. You know, it's so it's not even.
I have artists that I feel the same way about. I haven't heard it, but I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, and that's what people should do. People, if you support a band, I try to go to as many shows as I can. Obviously, as you know, as you get older, you have less energy to do so, and it takes a beating out of you, and it's harder. And I always buy the albums. I always, you know, I buy shirts. I buy whatever I can to support the band because, like you said, if you like a band and you want them to stick around and be able to afford to continue doing what they're doing and put out the music that changes your life and you love, then you have to, you know, invest a little bit of money into them.
Absolutely. And you should spend the time and really like think about what you're doing and support what you love. It's like, you know, that's how we survive. That's how we all survive. And if you're not going to support them in the way that needs to be supported, kiss them goodbye, because they're not going to be around much longer because you're not the only one doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I won't take up too much more of your time because I know you got kids, and I'm sure they want daddy's attention.
Yes,
and
they do.
and I just heard my wife and my little guy get home too. So, but thank you so much. I mean, you're going on tour, and I know you're going on tour in Europe. And is there any chance of a North American tour anytime soon, or any plans for that?
We have 3 shows at the end of this month on the West Coast to celebrate our 25th anniversary. One in San Diego on the 29th, one in LA on the 30th, and one in Vegas on the 31st. And then the European tour in November, December. And then we're nothing definitive yet for the States, but look for us around March or April. We'll be out again.
Awesome.
So,
you guys are.
Look on fearfactory.com or burtoncbell.com for all the information, and check out my graphic novel on my website I wrote. So
That's right. That was wasn't that a concept of one of the albums, right? It was
the
based
last
on,
record, the Industrialist.
Industrialist. Yeah. So that's awesome, man. I mean, and it's like I said, it's always in a selfish way. Like I did this podcast because I truly believe in the ripple effect and the fact that, like, you cause your own ripple of influencing people like me, and I'm sure many of my listeners that you put out some work and you don't notice, and sometimes we don't even realize the effect it's having on us, and you cause this little ripple. And I think that we all need to truly believe that we can cause a little bit of a ripple, and you never know who you're influencing and what they might go out and do and who they might influence. So it's important to do that.
I'm so true, and I'm so happy you asked me to be on this. It was great talking with you, Ricky.
You too, man. I really appreciate it. And hopefully if you're ever in the Massachusetts East Coast area, let me know. I'll dinner's on me, and we'll have some drinks and get some it's a good bottle of wine.
You're on.
Thanks, Burton. Have a good one. And thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
All right, talk to you soon.
See ya. Thank you.